Bray School was a set of schools started in the mid-1700s by the Associates of Dr. Bray, and that was a London-based religious charity whose mission included educating Black children in the Americas. It offered very strict Anglican-based education that emphasized Christian morality and utility, while also teaching reading and various skills such as sewing and knitting, particularly to the female students. But the education was also indoctrination. So they were teaching free and enslaved Black children from in the mid-1700s. There were 5 known Bray schools in the colonial era. There was one in Williamsburg. That was from 1760 to 1774. There were also schools in Fredericksburg, Virginia, Philadelphia, New York City, and Newport, Rhode Island. But the original building that housed the Williamsburg Bray School was found and is being restored by Colonial Williamsburg. And so the Williamsburg Bray School likely served up to about 300 children in its 14-year span. It was only open from 1760 to 1774, and it had just one teacher during that time, and her name was Anne Wager. And when she died in 1774, there was a lot of tension between the associates in London, their trustee in Williamsburg, and also the enslavers in town, and the school just never reopened. And then, of course, the American Revolution happened, and London charities were pulling out at that point. But we do have 3 attendance lists that survive out of those 14 years. And so it gives us a list of the students' names. And on one of the lists, it actually lists their ages. And if they were free, it lists their parents' names. And if they were enslaved, it names their enslavers' names. So at the lab, while Colonial Williamsburg is working on the restoration of the building, and it will open in fall of 2024, we in the lab are conducting genealogical research to really find the descendants of those students who attended the Bray School. And so not only am I working on this, we also have an oral historian, Tanya, we're both working from very traditional genealogical methods, going from what we know in the present and working with a descendant community in Williamsburg and in the surrounding areas, and working backwards in time for people who have deep roots in that Tidewater, Williamsburg Peninsula area. And then I'm also starting off from the other side with the names of the children and working forward in time using genealogical methods, looking at records, so that we can really learn more about the children, what their lived experience would have been like after they left school, and also what legacies were passed down to their children. And so I get excited about genealogy because I think it really helps fill in some of the blanks that maybe the history books don't talk about, and particularly the Williamsburg Bray School and even all the Bray schools don't really get entered into our textbooks very much. So we're kind of excited that genealogy is being used to kind of help fill out that story a bit more. So I hope that kind of covers it from our side.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I signed in from my phone as well, just in case I get stuck again. So hopefully everyone can hear me. So please feel free to learn more about the Bray School Lab and what they're doing. They also appeared on the Today Show just last week, so be sure to check out those interviews. And I know Elizabeth is going to drop off soon. Elizabeth, do you want to share anything else about visiting the Bray School and any resources there?
Oh, actually, yeah, thank you so much for mentioning it. Yes, so 2 things. If any of you feel as though or know that you have deep roots in that area that go back to the early 1800s, late 1700s, we would love to connect with you. We are casting a wide net amongst the African-American descendant community. and would love to have more people be part of the conversation and see if we can link up people and families with those Bray School students. And we also are having a descendant community event on Saturday, February 17th in Williamsburg. And let me go ahead and put the link for that as well. So if that's of interest, we'd love to see more people engage with this work. And also if we can do some genealogy for folks to help them trace their lineage back, we'd be really excited to do that. So let me go ahead and put those links in the chat. And I can stay for a little while longer because I'm interested to hear the conversation.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much. Also, if you have any questions at any point during this presentation, please feel free to share them in the chat. Try to save questions toward the end. We'll try to answer some of them that I see in the chat as we go along. But if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. And if you are unmuted at any point, please pay attention so you can mute yourself back. I will be paying attention, of course, to hopefully mute you back if you do become unmuted. And we're going to just try to answer as many questions as we can.
Thank you, Latoya. Good evening, everyone. If you don't mind, Latoya, I'd like to share my screen.
Absolutely.
So this is sort of all the information you will need about the Virginiana Room. We are, like Latoya said, located at the Main Street Library. You see we have our hours. We're open Monday through Friday, 10 to 6. And if you want to come on a Saturday, you would need to make an appointment ahead of time, but that's always welcome. Monday through Friday, you can just walk right in, open to the public. You don't need an appointment or need to call ahead or anything like that. But what we have, like it says here, we have over 4,000 volumes specializing in Virginia genealogy and local history. We also have some resources that talk about North Carolina genealogy as well. We also have our online high school yearbook archive. These are Newport News high schools that we have digitized the high school yearbooks and put them online. Those are free to access. We've also digitized some of our maps and photograph collections, and those are also free to access. And if you have a library card with Newport News Public Library, you get free access to ancestrylibrary.com. And this is available to access in any Newport News Public Library. So not just here at Main Street, you could also go to the Pearl Bailey Library or the Grissom Library up in Denby. Come in, log in onto any computer, and you can access it for free that way. But there are also lots of resources we have in the Virginiana Room that are not available online. Things like rolls of microfilm, all of our books, newspapers, city directories are a great resource for genealogy. If you know you had an ancestor living in Newport News going back to the late 1800s, you could look them up in a city directory. And hand it back to you, Latoya.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, Miss Karen over at the Tidewater Genealogy Society also has a library, and she will tell you exactly where they're located. They're located over in Denby, but she can tell you where in Denby they're located and what's there for you all to utilize.
Okay, and I think I'm going to share my screen as well.
Okay.
Let's see here. Okay, so that should show you the Tidewater Genealogical Society website. You got that? Can you all see that?
Yes.
Okay, super. So you see we are tidewatergensoc.org, and this gives you a little bit of an idea who we are. We've been around since 1969. So we've been in that library over there in the Denby area of Newport News for probably about 30 years. And we have a collection. Let me show you just a little bit about what we have. We have a book collection that's about 2,500 books. Somebody asked a question earlier about whether these books, whether our resources were focused only on Virginia. We are a heavily Virginia library. We've got resources. I'll also include some neighboring states. But one of the realities about genealogy research these days is that you can research everywhere from wherever you happen to be, because although there are a lot of records that are not online any longer, it's easy to access people who have direct access to records that are in courthouse basements or in genealogy libraries. So coming into a library like ours can give you access to a whole lot of information from other parts of the country or other parts of the world. We are located, as LaToya said, in the Denby area of Newport News. This is our address. We're in the old Warwick County Courthouse. We're only about 2 blocks from the Grissom Library. And this is when our regular meetings are. Those meetings are open to the public. We always have a speaker, bracketed by some social time at the beginning and some social time at the end. So you have the link to our website in the chat box, so you'll be able to pull all of this up. And I imagine you all have probably driven past the old Warwick County Courthouse. It was the courthouse from 1884 until Warwick County merged with Newport News in 1959. So it's got a museum on the first floor with lots of local history in that as well. So if you come to our library, we're always manned with volunteers. We are open. I guess it doesn't show that here. We're open on Tuesdays and Saturdays from 10 to 3, and we're open every other Thursday. But what you should bring with you, what you should expect from your visit to us. So you want to do that now, LaToya, or you want to wait?
Actually, that would be the next. Well, I was going to ask you, your opinion on genealogy. Why should people be interested in genealogy?
Okay, that's, I think everybody's motivation for being interested in genealogy is different, but I think we all are looking for connection. Who are we? Where did we come from? Where do we fit in this space where we're currently living? By training and occupation, I'm a historian, and so I see genealogy as basically the most sort of in-depth history you can do, not just what was happening in my country or in my community, but what was going on with my family and how do I connect to those bigger topics. And I think everybody's story, everybody's reason for doing this is a little bit different, but I think for everybody, it comes with connection. The awareness of as Elizabeth was saying, sometimes the communities that are less represented in the paper trail sometimes use your genealogy to figure out what medical conditions that existed back in your history.
If I walk into Main Street Library, what should I bring with me? What items should I bring? What do you think I should have, or at least know when I come in?
I can go first. If you're coming to a public library, I feel like there's two maybe different reasons for visiting. One, you're like a complete beginner and you just want a very basic introduction on how to get started, maybe on researching your family, some good tips, some pointers, and we can absolutely do that. You wouldn't need to bring anything with you in that case. If you're more advanced, if you're more an advanced researcher, then you would probably be best to, have a research question or a particular ancestor or branch of your family in mind, and then work on, what can that library offer you about that ancestor or that branch of your family. It's always good to bring a phone if you want to take pictures of records, or some coins or money with you for making copies, because copies will usually cost you. Here at the public library, it's 20 cents a page, or some kind of flash drive or storage device to save those copies of records that you find that you would want to keep and take home with you. But yeah, that's what I would bring.
And if I can jump in, the only thing I would add, I would have said all the things that Jillian just said, but she got to go first, so she said them first. The only thing I would add to that is, like she said, to have some idea of what you want to accomplish. And even if it's just a sketched out tree of you and your parents, and if you know your grandparents' names, if you know anything about them, we can use that to begin the process of figuring more things out. Writing down, birth and death dates for the people that you know about, so that when you come in, we can really take that information and begin to construct some genealogy from it.
And I'll jump in, and we can actually make progress a whole lot easier if we can actually have a name and a place. Okay.
Yeah. But beyond that, everything Jillian said about someplace to record what you brought, either a thumb drive or paper to write things down, a phone to take a picture of a document, which is way easier than trying to make a copy of a page in a bound book. And just ways of figuring out how to document what you find while you're there. It'll be a much more productive process.
Right. And I'm gonna just make a plug for both of you. That was wonderful answers. That's exactly what I would say, that we do have descendant community members come in and meet with me. Sometimes they will bring their entire ancestry tree and their DNA matches, and the DNA is not something I am as familiar with as maybe other genealogists, but they usually do come with I want to see where this line goes, and they'll give me, 2 documents that they have that gave them that information, and they say, I want to follow up with Mary Jones. Who did she marry, and who were her parents? And, what can we do back to there? Or I've had one woman come in and say, I don't know about going back to the 1700s, but I'd really like some help with, there was always this rumor in my family that so-and-so died kind of tragically. Is there any way to find it? And so we would go through the newspapers, just the archives that we have access to. So, but the public libraries and the free information that they have, both at the Genealogy Society, big plug for libraries. I'm using the libraries in Williamsburg and at William and Mary, as well as the Rockefeller Library at Colonial Williamsburg. All of that is free and open to the public to use. It's not just for people who work at CW or people who work at William and Mary. It's absolutely open to the public. So thank you so much. I'm so sorry I have to leave this conversation. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you both.
Thank you for
Karen and
coming.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Okay.
And she has segued into our next question about using those paid DNA testing sites like Ancestry.com, 23andMe. Why should you or shouldn't you use those DNA testing websites?
It will help you either confirm a link that you think is there, but you're not sure, or if you've got a real brick wall, and that's what us genealogists call something that, yeah, okay, I have no idea where this guy came from. I think that he, is from Mars or something. It's like, I have no idea who this guy is. Genealogy can help you get around that brick wall, but in a sense, you need to already think that there's something on the other side of that brick wall that you would like to trace. So I would not, if you're beginning genealogists, I would not worry at all about DNA at this point. A lot of people, I think, believe that the DNA will help them identify ethnicity. And it's really a bad tool for doing that at this point. There are several different companies that do DNA testing. Elizabeth mentioned earlier that she's not a DNA genealogist, and neither am I. But what I do know is that there's different ways of testing genealogy for different purposes. Either you're testing your mother's line or your father's line, and you've got different tests that do that. And then what you do with those results can be very different based on which test you've done. So I would not say that that's anything people need to spend their money on if they're really just beginning. If it's really important for them to take the research back multiple generations and knowing the ethnicity of the people that you might be looking for, if that would help you, then I think that's a great time to do that. But it's not really a tool that's going to help you skip the real trudge of doing the paper genealogy, because that's where the work comes in, and that's where you figure out what DNA makes sense. The science is just not advanced enough for it to help you avoid having to do the kind of gut level research that genealogy has always involved. So that's my take on that. I don't know if Jillian has anything to add or whatever.
Yeah, I do want to add, you know, we say that the first step in your research should be talking to your living relatives and finding out, you know, as much about your family from your currently living relatives. Sometimes that is just not a possibility. Say if you're adopted, DNA can be an excellent tool to find your family that way. Or, you know, sometimes family members just don't want to talk about their past. These are, you know, very personal information. Sometimes it can be painful. And DNA could be a tool to help you find other currently living relatives, especially cousins. So that is, yeah, it's a not like Karen said, it's not a shortcut for doing the research, but it can be helpful if you can't talk to your living relatives.
Thank you both. I know Karen said she wanted to share a couple of resources. I know, Karen, you can share your screen, right? You can still have access to share your screen. Also, a few tips that we can use
Sure.
to just start if we're going to use these resources.
Sure. Let me share my screen again. Here we go. And I'll go to two websites that I use a lot. Now, we all know, for example, that Ancestry.com is a wonderful resource. And Jillian mentioned that they have the library version of Ancestry at the public library, which is absolutely a thing that you could do. But there are a couple of websites that are free. I've put them in the chat box, and this is one of them. This is WikiTree. This is a collaborative, what they call a single family tree, which means that your research is going to get connected with the research that other people have done. This is not a personal family tree that only you have control over. You get that with Ancestry. You won't get that with WikiTree. But let me show you just roughly how WikiTree will work. And I'm going to put in somebody I know is there. So that's always helpful. And this will probably bring up my, okay, so this is my great-grandfather and this is my grandfather. So if you've never done any genealogy research and you plug a name into WikiTree, if someone else has researched that person on WikiTree, that profile will come up. So it's a bit of a long shot, but I sometimes use WikiTree to help me in some other research if I'm trying to fill in a gap that I can't fill in. So this is what WikiTree looks like. It tells me his birth and to Thomas Calvin Workman in some fashion, and I don't know how, but she put this information in, and it tells you that who his wife was. It says he was the father of 2 children. He was actually the father of 10 children, and I know who those 10 children are, but what I'm guessing is that Malona Gallagher only knew of 2 of them, Lula and Thomas Calvin. Fortunately, Thomas Calvin is my grandfather. So if I want to say, well, let me find out more about Thomas Calvin Workman, there he is. And says he's the father of Violet Henrietta Workman Arnold. That's my mother. And so she is on here. And you'll notice that I am my mother's profile manager. That means that nobody can go in and change this profile without my permission. And sometimes on One World Tree kinds of sites, you see all sorts of things going on where I would put my mother's in there, for example, and have her birth and death dates, and somebody would go in and change them. It's like, yeah, no, I know when she died. I was there. I was there when I was born, you know. So it kind of gives you some credibility. But if I want to say, okay, now who was his mother? Who was Thomas Calvin's wife? I can click on her. And George Thomas is one of my brick walls. I have no idea where he came from, but I do have their marriage record. The problem with George Thomas is every time you research him, you get everybody whose first name was Thomas, and that's discouraging. But WikiTree allows you to kind of move around in a family line as you're kind of trolling, as you're looking for connections. If you've got a line that you have been working on and you're trying to break down some barrier, WikiTree will do that. There's another website that I will just mention very briefly because it does roughly the same thing, and it's Jenny.com. And it's also a free site, although it does have a paid upgrade version. And it's welcoming me because I'm a member. And both of these sites allow you to upload your the family tree that you've created on another site like Ancestry, and it basically connects with the research that other people have done. Connecting with other people's research is really good if they've done good research. It's really bad if they've done bad research. So you always want to take all of this with a grain of salt. But those are 2 places that I would say if you want to just mess around a little bit and try to figure out whether you can find any connections, you can just go to these sites. They're free, put a name in and go for it. They hide living people, so you don't have to worry about marketers finding you if you begin to put in your name and then build back as far as you might, if you put in your name and build back to your father and build back to your grandfather, you might find that there's somebody else who has included your grandfather in their tree, and all of a sudden you have all of the connections that they'd already put in there. They could be wrong, so that doesn't give you the answers. It just tells you what questions to ask. And I think I'll stop at that point. Does that help, LaToya?
Yes, that does.
Okay.
And I know you also wanted to discuss the Library of Virginia.
I do. While I'm still sharing my screen, I'm going to pull that up, and Mary Beth is going to talk to you about that because she knows a whole lot about the Library of Virginia. And specifically, we're going to talk about a number of things in the Library of Virginia, but they have a project that you should be able to see here called Virginia Untold, where they have pulled together resources that will help people who are researching African-American genealogy, specifically pre-emancipation African-American genealogy. Post-emancipation, the records are similar to what people are looking at if whatever the genealogy line they're focusing on. But if you're looking at researching African Americans pre-emancipation, it's tough to do that. And so Mary Beth is going to tell you a little bit about that. And there she is. Can you all see her? Can you see her? Yep, there she is. Yeah. Hello. Okay.
Okay. The Virginia Untold Project has about 18,000 documents that the librarians and archivists at the Library of Virginia have been extracting from other sources in their collection. Scroll down the page here a bit. It'll say, oh geez, well, no, I'm sorry, on the left side of the blue, it says
right here.
record types,
Okay.
and she's highlighted in orange for me. So that'll give you a list of the different types of records that are different categories that they use. And I want to talk about a couple of those categories. Just there are things that perhaps we never necessarily think about African Americans or enslaved individuals being found in those records before. There'll be bills of sale sometimes where the ownership of an enslaved person will transfer from one enslaver to another, and they will actually have this information written up. Obviously, the name of the enslaved person will be listed, and the name of one enslaver to the second enslaver will be shown. Now, there's a second type of transfer of ownership. Sometimes, too, they'll have deeds, and they're often used when they're transferring the ownership of an enslaved person from one family member to another. They're called deeds of gift, where an enslaver might pass the ownership of an enslaved person to a child as they are being married, or something else along that line. They often had things called deeds of trust, where an enslaved person was used as the security for a loan. So you'll find deeds and bills of sale where enslaved individuals were actually shown to be documented in documents that show transfer of ownership. They're cohabitation registers. And this is a document that will be found at the county level. And they were recorded on September 27th, 1866, just as the Civil War was ending. There are two names, two different documents. One is the Register of Colored Persons Cohabitating Together as Husband and Wife on 27th of September, 1866. And this register was the legal vehicle by which formerly enslaved men and women legitimized both their marriages and the births of all of their children. So it wasn't required that they suddenly go to a church and become married. Their enslaved marriages were justified and legalized with that document. Likewise, there was a second register called the Register of Children of Colored Persons whose parents had ceased to cohabitate on the 27th of February, 1866. And this legitimized the children of the marriages where the former enslaved couple was no longer living together. So they didn't require birth certificates or birth records or registers. This document legitimized the birth of all of these children. There were deeds of manumission and deeds of emancipation. A deed of manumission was a document whereby an enslaver granted the enslaved individual probate records that the individual would be freed upon the death of the enslaver. There were free Negro registers, and they are in many of the counties, and they're still being found. Some counties had them tucked away. They don't even realize they have them. They're still being located in county courthouses. They start in 1793, and actually they were required in the cities starting in 1793. They were required to keep a register of all free Blacks or mixed race persons, noting their age, name, color, and stature, by whom and in what court the said Negro or mulatto was emancipated, and that each said a free Negro or mulatto was actually freed. So if he was born free or if he was emancipated, they had to record that distinction. In 1803, the counties were required to start recording these free Negro registers. And in 1834, they had to begin identifying marks and scars, which added one more detail of a description. And when you find these descriptions, they're quite complete. They had to be updated every 3 years. And it's fascinating. This weekend, the Library of Virginia is offering a workshop that my husband and I are both going to take, where they're going to do an artificial intelligence session where we will use these descriptions to create a photograph of enslaved individuals based on these descriptions. And I'm really excited about this. My husband has African-American ancestry, and we're going to take some descriptions we have of his family members and see if we can create what they actually would have looked like. So I'm excited. I think this is going to be a really unique use for artificial intelligence using these descriptions. And last of all, there are another couple of examples of the records. There are petitions to remain in the Commonwealth, and a petition for re-enslavement. Now, that kind of took my breath away when I heard the second one for the first time. The Virginia legislature passed law that said all formerly enslaved persons that were freed after the 1st of May in 1806 who remained in Virginia more than 12 months could be put on trial by the state and could be sold back into slavery. So you could be given your freedom, but you had 12 months to leave the state. You could only remain in the state for 12 months. So you had one option, which was to petition the state government, the legislature, for permission to remain. After 1815, the state government was finding they were being bombarded with these petitions, so they passed that permission off to the county courthouses. So the counties now were granted that permission to make the decision whether a freed individual could remain in Virginia. Many of them were refused. Few of them were allowed to remain. The petitions for re-enslavement, when you were granted your freedom, that meant you had 12 months to leave the state, which meant leaving your family, your friends, your social connections, your network of community, all of whom were still enslaved. And in addition, most of these newly freed enslaved persons did not have the financial means or the social support to move to a free state. One option was to apply for permission to remain, but if that permission wasn't granted and they weren't able to leave the state for whatever reason, another possibility possibly someone that owned their spouse or their parents. And even those petitions were not always granted. The things we take for common sense, it's shocking sometimes. So those are some of the documents you can find. And there are many more. Those are just some of the most interesting ones I find interesting. Anyway, okay.
That was awesome information, great information. And that information can be found at the Library of Virginia. The project is Virginia Untold. I have put the link in the chat. So if you want to visit the website, you can click there and save it. I do have a question on the floor from Ms. Lynn Fields. There's a rumor in our family that we are related to John Brown, the abolitionist. Would it be easier to confirm this by tracing John Brown's family tree or our own?
Yeah, I think Mary Beth is nodding beside me and Jillian is nodding as well. Yeah, the only way to trace is from yourself backwards. Because if you try to trace from John Brown down through the years, you don't know which line to follow. And you're going to get lost in the various branches of children whose families you can't document very well. And so really the best way to do that is to work backwards. Now, if you already know who your parents and grandparents were, you're only talking about a couple of generations before you get back to John Brown. So that's not an enormous task to do. But that would be my answer to that.
Okay. Does anyone have questions? We'll go ahead. We have about 10 minutes left. If you have a question at this time, please feel free to unmute yourself and answer any questions. Ask any questions that I'm going to ask. Go ahead.
I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now.
Okay.
I'll just add one thing. If you go on this website and you go down it a little bit, I can't find it right now, but there is a video where they actually play through how to use some of these resources to find an individual. They knew this enslaved person's first name and they knew what county she lived in. And by using the records that they have at the Library of Virginia, they were able to identify who the person was. So the things that we think are, just sound impossible, they have resources that allow you to do that. So I'm going to stop sharing now.
Okay.
I just want to add one thing about the Library of Virginia and their Virginia Untold project. It is an ongoing project, so not all of these valuable records are online yet. They're working furiously, but some of them are still only available on microfilm. And Newport News Public Library, or the Virginiana Room, offers a service called Interlibrary Loan. And you can request these rolls of microfilm and have them sent here to the Virginiana Room and view them here. And that is a free service that we offer. So if you find something that you want, but it's not available online, and you see that it's on microfilm, you can have it sent here instead of actually having to drive up to Richmond or wherever.
Right.
That's a great service to have.
The Library of Virginia has many of the primary source documents that you'll use for your research. They'll have the birth, marriage, death certificates, the wills, the deeds, the tax records, the military records that can help you prove your links between the generations. And that's how we do genealogy. You start with yourself and you prove your connection to your parents with a birth certificate, for example. And then you take your parents and you collect the documents that prove their link to their parents. And then you go back one more generation, and that's how you do genealogy. You work one generation at a time. And so, you use the documents that will, in the document will display a connection to a previous generation. So a birth or a marriage or a death certificate will have that connection in many cases to a prior generation. Sometimes military records will show that, or it may take a Bible record or an obituary from a newspaper or other such things, but that's how we do it. So different libraries and different archives have different collections that provide different types of records. So it's not just a matter of let's go to the National Archives and get my genealogy, because it's not all going to be in one place. You have to search different locations to collect different information sometimes, to collect the information that you need to fill in the gaps to make your connections.
And that's what makes this fun.
Yeah.
And that's what makes us do this for decades and even more. That's why our families don't talk to us anymore. So we come on programs like this so people will talk to us.
Well, we appreciate you. We have about 6 minutes left. Someone asked, since this Zoom is being recorded, will we be able to review it at a later date? Yes, I'm going to figure out how we can either share this to the city's Facebook page or the city's website. History events happening around the city all this month. Please go and visit. My dog is now barking because I've been gone too long. Please visit some of these events. The Color Purple stage play is opening tomorrow at Downing Groves, and it has one show tomorrow night, 2 shows on Saturday, and there's a special 360 photo booth there for opening weekend. Tickets are $25. I don't know if they're sold out yet, but please feel free to go and see the Color Purple and take advantage of the photo booth that we have. And there are quite a few other events happening throughout the city. Karen, do you want to share again when your open house is happening?
Yeah, I was just getting ready to put that in the chat box, but you preempted me. We are open regularly, as the website will tell you, and as I mentioned before, but on the 3rd Saturday of every month at the Tidewater Genealogical Society Library, we are specifically inviting anyone who wants to just get a taste of genealogy and wants to have an idea about what to do and where to go, having a sort of a beginner's workshop open house that lasts all day. So that'll the next one of those will be on Saturday, February 17th from 10 to 3.
Anytime.
I'll come by anytime. I will be there. And so if you come in and say, well, you told me to come by, I'll say, yep, that's what we're going to do. And so I can connection is, where do we fit, and how do we make sense of what's going on around us? by understanding our place within it a little bit more. So thank you for reminding me to do that, LaToya.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm just trying to connect people to resources. If you've enjoyed this workshop, please shoot us an email. Let us know if you would like to see another workshop. I know Main Street hosts a lot of genealogy workshops as well, in the Virginia Honor Room. And again, they are open for appointment on Saturdays. So if you want to make an appointment and go meet up there to start your family tree, please reach out to Jillian. I believe the information is, I don't know how everyone found this workshop, but I'm glad you did. I know we put it in Newport News Now. It was on Facebook and it was a couple other places. But if you don't have our email, feel free to shoot me an email. I'll put my email address here, and tell us what kind of events you would like to see in the city. And let us know, because we're all ears. We're trying to connect people to resources, and of course, fun things to do here in Newport News. So we're always curious to know. We'll have events happening again all month. We have some stuff, I think Sunday, and then there are also some other not city organizations, but I believe Paperback Inks, which is a black-owned bookstore over on Ward Boulevard. They are actually having the Tuskegee Airmen. One of them wrote a book, and his wife and his daughter, he's passed away now, but his wife and daughter are actually going to be there on Saturday doing a book reading and book signing. So that is at Paperback Inc. And I believe we have put that in the newspaper, in the Newport News Now, as well. But that's happening this Saturday. And they also have an event happening for people who are interested in writing their own books. They're having an author workshop, and that is also free. So we're going to be sharing events throughout the month. We'll be doing some things for Women's History Month as well. So just be on the lookout. Stay tuned to our Facebook pages. Stay tuned to Newport News Now, because we put things in there all the time, events there. And I've put my email in the chat. So if you want to just stay in touch, shoot me an email if you have questions. Jillian has put her contact information in there. Karen, did you put your contact information there in the chat? You're muted, so we can't hear you.
I am right this minute.
Thank you. So if there aren't any other questions, you sure all hearts and minds are clear? No other questions?
And if you don't know, if you click on the 3 dots at the bottom of the chat box, you can print out the chat box, so you can have all of this information without having to write it down. If you're on your top or something. Well, there you go. Why I'm here, Jillian.
Thank you all for attending tonight, and stay tuned for the next workshop. We'll be doing some more. So like I said, feel free to shoot me an email, and if there's some event or something that you want to see happening in the city, we're going to work on trying to make it happen and trying to connect you to more resources. So we appreciate you all. Thank you, Karen and Jillian, and everyone for attending.
Thank you, LaToya, for hosting.
Yeah, thank you, LaToya. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Everyone have a great night, and happy Black History Month.
Thank you.